What happens when America's beloved film star shares a stage with one of daytime television's most outspoken and polarizing personalities, and a routine interview slowly mutates into a confrontation so raw, so unscripted, that it ends in a walk-off no one sees coming? On a brisk Manhattan morning, beneath the bright studio lights of The View, everything felt predictably ordinary. Outside, traffic hummed along Columbus Avenue. Inside, the air carried that familiar blend of hairspray, coffee, and warm electrical equipment. Stagehands moved with quiet efficiency. Audience members filtered in, clutching tote bags and whispering excitedly as they found their seats. The set glowed in soft pastels and polished glass, its curved table gleaming beneath the overhead rigging. Backstage, Sandra Bullock arrived earlier than required, as she often did. She preferred calm before chaos. Wrapped in a tailored cream blazer, she sat comfortably in the green room with a porcelain cup warming her hands. A publicist leaned in close, flipping through note cards, release dates, box office projections, carefully rehearsed anecdotes about the emotional depth of her newest film. Sandra listened, nodding, but her mind drifted elsewhere. She always felt a flutter before live television. Not fear. Not quite. Just awareness. Live meant no edits. No second takes. No safety net. Still, this was supposed to be easy. She had been on this stage before. Laughed here. Shared stories. Promoted projects. Today would be no different. Or so she believed. Out on the main set, the hosts settled into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg adjusted her glasses, scanning her notes with a practiced calm. Joy Behar leaned back slightly, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Sarah Haynes chatted softly with the producers through her earpiece. Sunny Hostin and Alyssa Farah Griffin exchanged quick smiles. The countdown began. 5. 4. 3. 2. Red light. The theme music swelled, applause erupted, and the show burst into its usual rhythm of cheerful momentum. And we are thrilled to welcome back an Academy Award-winning actress. Whoopi's voice carried warmly across the studio. Please say hello to Sandra Bullock. Sandra stepped out to a wave of applause, her smile radiant but grounded. She moved with effortless grace, offering hugs, exchanging cheek kisses, settling into her seat as the audience's excitement tapered into attentive quiet. The opening minutes unfolded exactly as expected. Whoopi led with enthusiasm. Your new film, it's deeply personal, right? Sandra nodded, hands folded loosely in her lap. It is. It's about redemption. About starting over when life doesn't go the way you planned. Her voice held that familiar mix of sincerity and humor that audiences adored. She spoke of resilience. Of rebuilding when everything fractures. Of compassion over bitterness. The room leaned toward her. Sarah's eyes brightened. What drew you to that role? Sandra exhaled softly, reflecting. Because we all face moments where we have to decide who we're going to be after we fail. That's the real test. Not perfection, but growth. The audience hummed in approval. A few heads nodded. Someone murmured, "That's beautiful." But across the table, Joy remained unusually still. She had not laughed at Sandra's anecdotes. Had not chimed in with a witty aside. She watched instead, studying, assessing. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. The cameras didn't linger there long enough for viewers at home to catch it fully. But the tension had begun its quiet ascent. Sarah followed up gently. Do you really believe everyone can change? Sandra didn't hesitate. I believe most people can. When they're honest with themselves. When they're accountable. Most. The word hung in the air. And that was when Joy finally leaned forward. Most, she repeated, her tone light, but edged. That sounds optimistic. The warmth in the studio dimmed almost imperceptibly. Sandra turned toward her, smile polite. I think optimism is underrated. Joy tilted her head slightly. Or maybe unrealistic. A ripple passed through the audience. Subtle. Barely audible. Whoopi shifted in her seat. Sandra's smile thinned, but didn't disappear. Unrealistic how? Joy's voice remained measured, but firmer now. Because some people don't change. Some people thrive exactly as they are, self-serving, insulated, comfortable. The pivot was sharp. Unexpected. Sandra blinked once, recalibrating. I'm not saying everyone transforms overnight. But I think growth is possible. Joy gave a short, almost disbelieving laugh. That's easy to say when life has worked out for you. There it was. The first unmistakable crack. Sunny glanced toward Whoopi. Alyssa's posture stiffened. Sarah looked down at her notes as though considering whether to interrupt. Sandra maintained composure. Years in the spotlight had trained her for this. I've had struggles too, she said evenly. I'm sure you have, Joy replied. But there's a difference between struggle and consequence. Silence thickened. The lighting felt hotter now. The studio air, heavier. Sandra's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. So slight most viewers wouldn't notice. Are we still talking about the film? She asked gently. Joy leaned back, lips pursed. I'm talking about the idea of redemption. And whether everyone deserves it. The conversation had veered, off script, off tone, off expectation. Whoopi attempted to pivot. Well, speaking of redemption arcs, but Joy continued. What about accountability, she pressed. What about the people hurt while someone else is finding themselves? The implication landed hard. From backstage, Sandra's publicist straightened abruptly. Sandra inhaled slowly. Forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility, she said. It means not carrying anger forever. Joy's eyes narrowed slightly. That's a luxury, though. Not everyone can afford that kind of detachment. A murmur rolled through the audience. The room no longer felt like a daytime talk show. It felt like a courtroom. Sandra's tone cooled, not hostile, but firmer. If there's something specific you'd like to address, I'd prefer we speak plainly. The statement was calm. Direct. And it changed everything. Joy's lips curved, but without warmth. Oh, I'm speaking plainly. The temperature seemed to drop. Sarah tried again to redirect. Maybe we should, but the shift had already taken hold. The promotional interview was dissolving, frame by frame. Sandra could feel it now, the undercurrent. Beneath the words. This wasn't abstract philosophy. This was personal. She straightened slightly. I came here to talk about storytelling, she said softly. Not insinuations. Joy's gaze sharpened. And I'm talking about authenticity, she replied. Sometimes the two aren't the same. The audience sat frozen. Cameras continued to roll. Backstage producers exchanged urgent glances. And in that suspended moment, between civility and collision, something irreversible began to surface. Sandra held Joy's stare, her expression steady but wounded at the edges. Joy leaned forward again. And the next words forming behind her tightened jaw would change the course of the entire broadcast. The warmth was gone. The smiles had faded. And millions watching at home could feel it, the calm had shattered. The silence that followed felt unnatural. Not the comfortable pause of daytime television, not the gentle rhythm of hosts taking turns. This was a vacuum. A suspended breath. A warning. Under the blazing lights of the view, the polished glass table reflected 5 women sitting inches apart, yet separated by something far heavier than distance. Sandra Bullock kept her posture upright, shoulders squared but not rigid. She had been in high-pressure situations before, award speeches gone wrong, tabloid storms, public heartbreak dissected by strangers, but this felt different. This wasn't anonymous criticism floating online. This was direct. Personal. Live. Across from her, Joy Behar leaned forward, elbows grazing the table's edge, eyes fixed. "You talk about forgiveness," Joy said, her voice steadier now but sharpened by conviction. "But forgiveness without full transparency? Without public accountability? That feels curated." The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Curated. Sandra blinked once, absorbing it. Curated how? Joy let out a short exhale, almost amused. Carefully constructed. Polished. Strategically compassionate. A faint ripple moved through the audience. The camera cut briefly to Whoopi Goldberg, whose expression had shifted from polite attentiveness to visible concern. Sandra's jaw tightened, just slightly. "I'm not sure I follow," she said evenly. Joy tilted her head. "That's interesting." The air thickened. "You've built a reputation," Joy continued, "as the industry's moral compass. The grounded one. The relatable one. Always photographed at charity galas. Always speaking about kindness. Redemption. Growth." Sandra's fingers pressed together in her lap. "And you're suggesting that's insincere?" she asked. "I'm suggesting," Joy replied, her tone rising a fraction, "that sometimes public redemption stories are easier to tell when you're already standing on a very high platform." The implication was no longer subtle. From the side of the stage, a producer lifted a hand, a silent signal to ease up. It went ignored. Sarah Haynes attempted a gentle entry. "I think what Joy is asking is—" "No," Joy interrupted, not breaking eye contact with Sandra. "I'm asking directly." Sandra inhaled slowly, visibly centering herself. "If you have a specific concern about my integrity," she said, her voice cool but controlled, "I would prefer you say it clearly." A hush swept through the studio. Even the faint hum of the overhead lighting seemed louder now. Joy's lips pressed thin. "Fine," she said. The word echoed. "What about the humanitarian image?" Joy continued. "The carefully timed donations. The high-profile fundraisers. The glowing magazine covers about your generosity." Sandra's heartbeat quickened, not visible, but real. She felt heat rising along her collarbone. This wasn't a discussion about philosophy anymore. This was an indictment. "My charitable work," Sandra replied, "is deeply personal." Joy gave a short, humorless laugh. "Personal? Or strategic?" A collective intake of breath. Sunny Hostin's eyes widened slightly. Alyssa Farah Griffin stared at Joy as if silently urging restraint. Sandra's composure began to show faint cracks, not explosive, but human. Her voice carried weight now. "Are you accusing me of exploiting philanthropy?" she asked. "I'm questioning whether celebrity charity sometimes functions as reputation management," Joy shot back. "A tax write-off with a red carpet." The phrase hung heavy. The audience sat rigid. No one laughed. No one clapped. Sandra leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering, steadier than her pulse felt. "I've supported causes long before they were photographed. Long before headlines. And I don't owe a public ledger to validate that." Joy's eyes flashed. "There it is," she said. "That moral high ground." Whoopi finally leaned in, voice firm. "Joy," but Joy continued. "You speak like you've transcended the ugliness of this industry," she said, her tone gaining force. "Like you're above it." Sandra's restraint thinned. "I have never claimed to be above anything," she replied. "But you benefit from it," Joy countered instantly. "From the narrative. From being adored." Sandra's gaze hardened, steel beneath calm. "Is this about me?" she asked quietly. "Or about something else?" The question sliced cleanly. Joy's shoulders stiffened. The cameras caught it, that flicker. That microscopic hesitation. But instead of retreating, Joy surged forward. "You want specifics," she said. "Fine. I've watched this industry reward carefully packaged kindness while sidelining people who refuse to sugarcoat reality." Her voice rose, not shouting yet, but charged. "I've spent decades being labeled abrasive because I ask uncomfortable questions," Joy continued. "And then someone comes along with a gentle smile and a redemption speech and becomes the symbol of moral clarity." The temperature in the studio seemed to spike. Sandra stood her ground. "I don't control how people perceive me. But you benefit from it." Joy snapped. There it was. The first crack of open hostility. The audience shifted uncomfortably. A cough echoed too loudly. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Sarah leaned toward Joy softly. "Maybe we should take a breath." Joy shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm tired of breathing through it." Sandra felt something inside her settle, not anger exactly, but resolve. "If you believe I've wronged someone," she said evenly, "name it." The directness reverberated. Joy's chest rose and fell faster now. "You represent a system," she said. "A system that rewards palatable vulnerability. That elevates certain faces. Certain stories. While others fight twice as hard for half the grace." The implication sharpened again, broad, but pointed. Sandra's voice cooled further. "That's a systemic issue. Not a personal failing." Joy leaned closer across the table. "Systems are upheld by individuals." The words landed like a gavel strike. Whoopi's patience finally thinned. "Joy. We need to redirect." But Joy's composure was unraveling. She pushed back her chair abruptly. The sound scraped across the studio floor, harsh, jarring. A gasp rippled through the audience. Joy stood. The sudden height difference changed the entire visual dynamic. Sandra remained seated for half a beat, then slowly rose as well, not aggressively, but unwilling to be physically looked down upon. Two figures now standing across the gleaming table. Lights blazing. Cameras locked. "I'm done pretending this is all sweetness and light," Joy declared. "I'm done watching celebrities float above criticism while the rest of us are crucified for speaking bluntly." Her voice echoed slightly in the studio rafters. Sandra's pulse hammered, but her voice remained controlled. "This is not bluntness," she said. "This is projection." That word detonated. Joy's face flushed. "You think you're enlightened?" she fired back. "You think because you've stayed beloved, you've cracked some code about decency?" Sandra's eyes flashed now, the first visible spark of anger. "No," she replied. "But I know cruelty when I see it." A stunned silence. Joy's breathing quickened. For a split second, something flickered across her expression, doubt, perhaps. Or the realization of how far this had gone. But pride surged louder. In one sharp motion, Joy reached for the microphone pack clipped at her waist. The movement was abrupt. Unscripted. Real. She yanked it free. The wires snapped audibly. A sharp metallic pop cut through the air. Gasps erupted. "You know what?" Joy's voice boomed, unamplified now but louder than before. "I'm finished." Producers leapt from their stations. A stage manager gestured frantically to cut to commercial, but the control room hesitated, stunned. "I'm done being the villain so everyone else can look gracious," Joy continued. "I'm done smiling through hypocrisy." Sunny rose slightly from her chair. "Joy, please, this isn't a moment," Joy snapped. "This is decades." Sandra stood motionless now, watching. Not triumphant. Not furious. Sad. That was the unexpected shift. I hope, Sandra said quietly, that whatever this is, you find peace with it. The words were not mocking. That almost made them worse. Joy stared at her, breathing hard. Keep your sympathy, she said coldly. Some of us don't need redemption arcs. And then she turned. Walked. The click of her heels against the studio floor echoed as she strode past stunned crew members and disappeared behind the curtain. The set remained frozen. 5 chairs. 4 hosts. 1 vacant space. The applause sign remained dark. The cameras kept rolling. And the nation watched in stunned silence as the reality set in. This was no heated debate. This was a fracture. A rupture. A departure that could not be undone. But what would happen when the cameras came back on, and the show had to continue without her? For several seconds after Joy Behar disappeared behind the curtain, no one moved. The studio lights still blazed down in unforgiving brightness. The audience remained seated, hands frozen mid-lap, as though any sudden motion might shatter whatever fragile order was left. The polished surface of the table reflected 4 stunned faces and 1 empty chair, a silent monument to what had just unfolded on live television. Under the banner of The View, something irreversible had happened. Sandra Bullock remained standing for a moment longer, her breathing measured, shoulders rising and falling slowly. The anger that had briefly surfaced in her eyes had cooled into something heavier, disappointment, perhaps. Or disbelief. Across from her, Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward, hands clasped tightly together, the authority in her posture momentarily shaken. Sarah Haynes pressed her fingertips to her lips, staring toward the exit Joy had taken. Sunny Hostin blinked rapidly, as though trying to recalibrate what live television even meant anymore. Alyssa Farah Griffin sat rigid, eyes darting toward the control booth. In the back of the studio, producers gestured frantically. A floor manager counted down in a whisper. The control room, suddenly aware that millions of viewers were still watching, made a split-second decision. Cut to commercial. The screen at home shifted abruptly to advertisements. But inside the studio, the silence deepened. Sandra slowly lowered herself back into her seat. The scrape of the chair legs sounded unnaturally loud. She placed her palms flat on the table, grounding herself. A makeup artist hovered near the stage edge, unsure whether to approach. Whoopi exhaled deeply. Okay, she said quietly, more to the panel than to the room. Let's breathe. Her voice, usually booming with confident warmth, carried strain now. Sandra nodded once. I'm sorry that happened, she said softly. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't accusatory. It was simply human. Sunny shook her head immediately. You don't owe anyone an apology. But Sandra continued, her gaze distant for a moment. I came here to talk about a film about compassion. I didn't expect this. In the hallway beyond the curtain, raised voices could be heard faintly, producers attempting to reach Joy, security ensuring no one interfered, assistants scrambling to assess damage control. The commercial break clock ticked down relentlessly. Inside the studio, the temperature seemed to shift from explosive to reflective. The audience, once wide-eyed and stunned, now whispered quietly among themselves. Some checked their phones. Social media was already erupting. Clips were being uploaded in real time. Hashtags forming. Opinions solidifying before the show even returned from break. The legacy of a decades-long tenure had unraveled in under 10 minutes. Whoopi straightened in her chair as the floor manager signaled 10 seconds. Okay, she murmured. We address it calmly. Sandra nodded again, her composure returning like armor sliding back into place. 5. 4. 3. 2. The red light flicked on once more. Whoopi faced the camera directly, her tone steady but solemn. Before we continue, we want to acknowledge what just occurred. Live television can be unpredictable, and emotions can run high. A pause. We apologize to our viewers for the intensity of that exchange. The camera briefly cut to Sandra, who offered a small, composed nod. Whoopi continued, "Our guest is here to discuss her work, and we remain committed to respectful conversation." Sandra leaned toward her microphone slightly. Her voice, though softer than before, carried strength. "I believe dialogue is important," she said. "Even when it's uncomfortable. But there's a difference between questioning ideas and attacking character." The audience responded with gentle, supportive applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. Sandra did not smile. Instead, she spoke plainly. "I stand by what I said earlier. Redemption doesn't mean avoiding accountability. It means growth. It means reflection. It means not letting bitterness define you." The subtlety of her words did not go unnoticed. Sunny added carefully, "This show has always embraced strong opinions. But today reminded us how important boundaries are." Sarah nodded, visibly regaining her footing. "We're human. All of us. And sometimes, that humanity shows in ways we don't expect." Alyssa glanced toward Joy's empty chair, then back to the camera. "And sometimes," she said quietly, "it forces change." The segment transitioned, awkwardly but intentionally, back toward Sandra's film. Questions were asked. Answers were given. But the earlier warmth could not fully return. It hovered somewhere just out of reach, like sunlight behind thick cloud cover. Still, Sandra carried herself with deliberate dignity. Each response measured. Each breath controlled. She refused to let the spectacle define the remainder of her appearance. As the interview concluded, she thanked the panel sincerely. She rose, offered restrained hugs, and exited the stage not with triumph, but with quiet grace. The applause followed her, louder now, supportive, almost protective. Behind the curtain, she paused briefly in the dim hallway. The adrenaline that had sustained her began to ebb. For a moment, she closed her eyes. Not in relief. Not in victory. In processing. Because beneath the confrontation, beneath the anger and accusations, there had been something undeniably human, years of unresolved frustration surfacing all at once. Elsewhere in the building, Joy remained out of sight. Producers attempted to persuade her to return, to reconsider, to issue a statement. Whether she would or not remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. A line had been crossed. And it could not simply be edited out. Within hours, clips flooded every platform. Headlines questioned professionalism. Commentators debated authenticity versus cruelty. Some defended Joy's bluntness. Others condemned her volatility. The moment became cultural shorthand for the fragile balance between candor and respect. Back on the now quiet set, staff began resetting the table for the next segment. The empty chair was pushed neatly back into place, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But everyone knew. Something had shifted. Not just for the show. For everyone involved. Because live television does not offer rewrites. It captures fractures in real time. It reveals what simmers beneath polished surfaces. And sometimes, it forces truths, uncomfortable, imperfect truths, into the open. Sandra would later reflect privately that the confrontation hurt, but it did not define her. Growth, after all, requires standing firm when tested. It requires refusing to mirror hostility with hostility. Joy, wherever she was in that moment, faced a different reckoning, one that extended beyond ratings or reputation. A reckoning with whether speaking loudly always equates to speaking wisely. And the audience, millions of viewers across the country, witnessed something rare, not a rehearsed argument, not a scripted scandal, but raw emotion unfiltered. As the final credits of the day's broadcast rolled, the studio lights dimmed gradually, casting long shadows across the now empty table. The echo of raised voices had faded. In its place lingered a question. When conviction collides with composure, who truly wins? Perhaps no one. Perhaps the only victory lies in how we choose to carry ourselves after the storm. If this moment left you stunned, if it made you question the thin line between honesty and hostility, then you've just witnessed why live television remains so powerful, and so unpredictable. And if you want more deep dives into the moments that shake Hollywood and redefine public perception, make sure you like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story that unfolds when the cameras start rolling. Because sometimes, the real drama isn't scripted. It's revealed.